The monitor that breathed. If you ever buy the same baby monitor I did, destroy it before you plug it in. I'm not exaggerating, and I'm not trying to be dramatic, just don't. There are some things that don't belong between you and the silence of your own home. I bought mine because I was tired of not sleeping. Funny, right? Buying a device to help me sleep, only for it to make sure I never do again. My daughter Lily had just turned 1. She's perfect tiny fingers, a giggle that sounds like someone tapping glass, and the same soft brown eyes her mother had. I wish her mother were still here to see her, but maybe it's better she's not. The first few weeks alone were rough. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like a threat. Every faint sigh from the baby monitor snapped me awake. I'd tried the cheap ones before, staticky, full of feedback, but they never gave me that real sense of security. I wanted to see her breathing, hear her gentle little noises, feel like I could protect her even from the next room. So I ordered the most advanced monitor I could find. 2-way audio, night vision, even motion tracking. The first night I set it up, I remember thinking how comforting the soft red light was, glowing faintly in the corner of her room. I sat on my bed with the receiver, listening to the rhythmic sound of Lily's breaths. Slow, steady, perfect. It almost lulled me to sleep until it didn't. I woke to a sound I couldn't place. It wasn't Lily's voice, not her little sleep sighs or murmurs. It was heavier, wet. A deep inhale followed by a slow exhale that made the hairs on my arms rise. It took me a second to realize the pattern, the rhythm of it. I sat up, counted silently, and felt my stomach drop. It matched me. When I inhaled, the sound on the monitor inhaled. When I held my breath, so did it. I laughed it off at first. Probably some kind of audio feedback loop, my breathing echoing through the mic. I turned the receiver volume down, then off, then unplugged it completely. The breathing continued for a full 5 seconds before it stopped. That was when I noticed something even stranger. Lily didn't stir, not once. The sound was loud enough that it should have woken her, but the baby monitor's night vision showed her still as a doll. One tiny hand curled near her face. The next morning, I convinced myself it was nothing. Just stress, exhaustion, maybe even a dream. I'd been running on caffeine and grief for months. Sleep deprivation does weird things. It makes shadows move when they shouldn't. Makes whispers form in the spaces between air conditioning hums. Still, that night I couldn't shake the memory of the sound. I told myself I'd test it, see if I could recreate the breathing. I turned the monitor on before bedtime and listened. For the first hour, just the soft hiss of static and the occasional shuffle from Lily's blanket. Then again, that same steady inhale. I froze, counted 1, 2, 3. The sound lined up perfectly with my lungs again. This time I whispered, "Hello?" The breathing stopped. The silence that followed felt alive, thick and expectant, like the pause before a confession. I sat there waiting for something, anything. Finally, Lily stirred and made a soft gurgle, and I let out a shaky laugh. Maybe the mic picked up my own breathing and fed it back with a delay. That's all it was. But that night I dreamt of standing over her crib, staring down into the dark. I could hear her breathing, but also mine, and somewhere beneath it, a third rhythm. A slow drag of air that didn't match either of us. The next few days passed without incident. I started to relax again, even joked about my haunted baby monitor on a parenting forum. People chimed in with stories, feedback, radio interference, even ghost hunters claiming spirits use EMF frequencies to communicate. I rolled my eyes, but some part of me saved the comment thread anyway. By Friday, I'd almost forgotten. Until the storm hit. The wind screamed against the windows, the lights flickered, and Lily cried. I ran to her room, picked her up, soothed her until her tiny sobs faded into hiccups. Once she fell back asleep, I set her down and checked the monitor screen. My reflection in the black lens startled me. I looked pale, older somehow. I went back to bed, leaving the monitor on the nightstand, volume low. That's when I heard it again. Only this time, the breathing didn't match mine. It was slower, raspier, like someone struggling through a thick fog. And behind it, faintly, a second sound. A whisper. Not words at first, just the shape of language, like someone practicing how to speak. I leaned closer, straining to hear. The whisper grew clearer, threading through the static, curling around each syllable. It was trying to say something. My heart started hammering in my chest, and I realized the sound wasn't coming from the receiver. It was echoing faintly in the hallway outside my room. I grabbed my phone flashlight and stepped out. The air was cold, heavy with that electric scent before lightning. Lily's door was cracked open, the red light from the monitor blinking softly inside. I called her name softly, once, twice. No answer, just the faint hiss of static. I reached for the doorknob, pushed it open slowly, and froze. The monitor's speaker was crackling, the same low breathing pulsing through it. But the lens, it was aimed at the crib, and on the screen I saw myself standing in the doorway. The camera had turned. I ran forward, snatched it from the shelf, and yanked the plug from the wall. The breathing stopped instantly, replaced by dead silence. Lily stirred in her sleep, completely unharmed. I sat there for a long time, shaking, the unplugged monitor in my hands. When I finally worked up the courage to test it again, I pressed the power button. The screen flickered once, then filled with static, and through the crackle, faint but distinct, came a single word: my name. That wasn't the first time I'd heard it whispered through static. Section 2. Interference. If the first night was a fluke, the second was a message. I just didn't realize who or what was trying to talk to me. The morning after I heard my name whispered through the monitor, I woke up convinced it had to be a trick of my exhausted brain. Maybe I'd been half asleep, dreaming with my eyes open. I wanted to believe that. I needed to. The idea that a piece of plastic and circuitry could know my name was absurd. Still, I couldn't shake it. The memory followed me through breakfast, through the motions of feeding Lily her oatmeal and pretending I wasn't watching the monitor every 5 seconds. The red light blinked innocently. By noon, I was paranoid enough to start checking for logical explanations. I went door to door on my street with the receiver in my hand, pretending it was about signal interference. A couple of neighbors humored me. Old Mrs. Derry with her cats, a young couple 2 houses down. None of them had the same brand. One woman suggested baby monitors could pick up cross-chatter from radios or walkie-talkies. I nodded, pretending that made sense. But if it were just interference, why did it say my name? That night I put the monitor on my nightstand again. I told myself it was for Lily's safety, not my curiosity. She slept peacefully, her chest rising and falling in the dim glow of the camera. I stayed awake, waiting. Midnight passed. Nothing but the soft static hum. I started to drift until a familiar cry snapped me upright. "Daddy!" Lily's voice, sharp and frightened. I bolted upright, heart pounding, ready to run to her room. But something stopped me. The image on the screen. She wasn't crying. She was asleep, her little hand still curled against her cheek. I turned up the volume. The crying continued, identical in tone, pitch, rhythm, but without movement on the screen. My brain couldn't process it. It was her voice, but not coming from her. I whispered. Lily. The crying cut off instantly. I waited. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then came a faint sound that didn't belong to my daughter. A low, wet chuckle. My stomach twisted. I turned off the monitor, but even unplugged, the sound lingered for a moment longer, like it was burned into the air itself. The next morning, I decided to record everything. I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. I set up my phone beside the receiver, hit record, and left it running all night. When I checked the footage in the morning, my heart dropped. The video started normal, Lily sleeping soundly. At 2:11 a.m., faint crying began, just like before. But when I listened closer, the crying wasn't her voice. It was almost her. The syllables were slightly off, as though someone learning how to imitate her had gotten close but not perfect. And then came the whisper again. Only this time it said clear as day, "Daddy?" I didn't remember hearing that during the night. I replayed the clip. Again and again, my hands shaking. On the fifth playback, something changed. I swear to God it changed. The voice said a new word. "Daddy, stay." I sat there staring at the phone, the timestamp unmoving, the same section looping, and the audio different each time. The words seemed to respond to me, evolve the more I listened. By noon, I'd convinced myself it was an audio glitch, maybe my phone's algorithm or some kind of weird compression. I even uploaded it to a cloud drive just to make sure it wasn't a playback bug. When I downloaded it again later that evening, the file name had changed. Instead of monitor recording 1, it said listening. That night, I moved the crib into my room. I told myself it was temporary, that I just needed to feel closer to Lily for a while. But the truth was, I couldn't stand being separated by a wall anymore. The monitor still sat on the dresser, aimed at the crib. I didn't even need it, but I couldn't bring myself to unplug it either. At around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of my daughter's laughter. Relief washed through me until I realized her lips weren't moving. The laughter came from the monitor. It was pitch perfect, bright and innocent, looping like a recording. Then mid-laugh it faltered, warped, turned wet and slow. Like someone stretching a tape, I whispered, "Stop it." The laughter stopped, and then a whisper back. Soft, eager. "Stop it?" It mimicked my voice this time. I nearly threw the monitor across the room, but Lily stirred, and I froze. She opened her eyes halfway, then smiled, not at me, but at something behind me. I spun, flashlight in hand. Nothing. Just shadows and the faint hum of the air conditioner. When I turned back, the monitor's screen had shifted. Instead of the crib, it showed static intercut with flashes of my own face from earlier that day. Me feeding her. Me standing by the window, me staring at the camera. It shouldn't have had any of that. It was live only. No recording function. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor with my back to the wall. The monitor face down, the receiver turned off. Every so often I'd hear faint sounds from it anyway, like static rearranging itself into something almost human. In the morning, I tried showing the recordings to my neighbor, but when I hit play, all we heard was silence. My neighbor looked at me the way people look at stray dogs, pity with a side of fear. That evening, I deleted the files, threw the monitor in a drawer, and promised myself I'd never touch it again. I even laughed about it a little, told Lily her dad was just being paranoid. She giggled back, clapped her tiny hands, and said her first real word. "Daddy," I froze. She'd never said it before, not clearly. Her mouth formed the syllables perfectly, too perfectly. The sound wasn't hers. I knew that voice. I scooped her up, heart thudding, and held her close. Her warmth, her breath, her heartbeat. Real, tangible proof that she was here and human. Still, when I looked over her shoulder, I saw the drawer with the monitor vibrating slightly. I pressed my ear against it and heard whispering through the wood. The same word, over and over, like it was practicing again. "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." I left it there for hours until the whispering faded. For a while I thought it was over. I dared to hope maybe the storm had fried its circuits or whatever made it aware. But just before dawn, as I finally started to drift, the baby monitor came alive again on its own. The light blinked red. The voice spoke clearly this time, calm, conversational. "Where's Mommy?" I dropped the receiver. My blood went cold. I'd never told it she was dead. Section 3. The Sleep Experiments. After that night, sleep became a rumor. I'd close my eyes for a few seconds, but every time I started drifting, I'd see that blinking red light in the dark, feel the whisper crawling back through static. I told myself I'd prove it, whatever it was. I'd document everything, analyze it, get it out of my head. That's what started what I called the sleep experiments. It began with one camera, then two. I positioned my phone facing the crib and an old webcam aimed at me, just to catch both perspectives. I wanted evidence, something I could show someone else so they'd believe me. Maybe a scientist, maybe a priest, I didn't care. I only knew that if I didn't figure out what was happening, I'd lose my mind. For the first hour, everything was quiet. I sat in the dark with a notebook, writing timestamps, checking the monitors, trying to stay awake. I recorded every tiny sound, creaks, clicks, the occasional rustle of Lily turning in her sleep. Then around 2:47 a.m., the baby monitor clicked on. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even looked at it for nearly an hour. The light blinked to life on its own, steady and deliberate, like it was waiting for me to notice. "Lily," I whispered. Nothing. Then the soft static breathing began again, but it didn't match me this time. It came in uneven bursts, shallow and panicked. I realized I was holding my breath. I pressed record on my phone, leaned closer, and heard a second breath underneath the first, faint, overlapping, out of sync. Two rhythms now, two distinct voices. At first they whispered over each other like a conversation half heard through a wall. But as I turned the volume up, their tones separated. One voice was higher, lighter, almost pleading. The other was lower, like it had weight, like it came from somewhere beneath the floor. I couldn't make out the words, until the higher voice said, clear as a whisper in my ear, "Don't listen." I flinched. My pulse hammered in my neck. The lower voice responded immediately, "Stay awake." Their tones weren't fighting, they were arguing. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the nightstand. Lily stirred and made a small sound, and for a second, both voices went silent. The monitor flickered, cutting from static to her image. She was lying perfectly still, but her eyes were open, wide, unblinking. I turned to look at her crib in real life. She was still asleep. On the monitor, her eyes moved. I reached for the plug again, but before I could, the lighter voice spoke once more. "Please." It sounded terrified. The deeper one followed, almost laughing. "He can't hear you now." My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the receiver. The static roared in the quiet room, the kind of noise that gets inside your teeth. I turned on every light in the house after that. I couldn't stand the dark. I played music, turned on the TV, anything to drown out the whispering that still echoed in my ears. But the thing about fear is, it doesn't go away just because the lights are on. It hides behind them. The next morning I watched the recordings, frame by frame. For most of it there was nothing unusual, until I noticed something subtle. Whenever I looked away from the crib in the footage, just for a second, The shadows near it shifted. Not fast, not obvious, but in that uncanny, impossible way things move when you blink. I replayed one frame over and over, a faint, elongated shape leaning over the crib, almost invisible unless you brightened the video. But when I enhanced the image, there was nothing there. Just static distortions, artifacts from compression. At least that's what I told myself. That evening I tried again. Another experiment. This time I planned to stay awake the entire night. I made coffee, set up timers to check in every half hour, wrote notes like some kind of scientist of my own nightmare. By 4 a.m., my eyes burned. My handwriting had dissolved into squiggles. The monitor had been quiet for hours, almost too quiet. I started to wonder if I'd scared whatever it was away. Then the receiver turned itself back on. The voices came back, clearer now. Not arguing this time, whispering together. Their tones almost synchronized, like two people trying to sing the same note but slightly out of tune. I whispered, "What do you want?" They stopped. Then the higher voice said, "Watch." I turned toward the monitor. The camera view was normal for a moment. Lily, the crib, the faint glow of her nightlight. Then for one frame there was movement behind her, a hand, pale and thin, reaching through the crib bars before vanishing. I jumped to my feet, heart racing, but when I looked in the crib, nothing was there. Lily was fine, sleeping soundly. Her tiny fingers were clutching the blanket like always, but she wasn't alone in the frame anymore. On the monitor screen, two shapes lingered beside her crib. Faint silhouettes, one taller, one smaller. Both facing the camera. I couldn't breathe. My skin prickled all over. The taller one moved first, leaning forward until its face filled the entire screen, except it wasn't a face. It was static in the shape of one, constantly shifting like pixels trying to decide what to become. The smaller shadow whispered something to it, and both vanished when I blinked. When the image returned, Lily was sitting up in her crib, staring directly at the monitor lens. I tore the plug from the socket and the power cut out instantly. The silence afterward was unbearable, like the air was waiting to exhale. I didn't even try to sleep after that. I sat at the kitchen table trembling, scrolling through every forum, message board, and late-night paranormal subreddit I could find. At first, I didn't know what to type. Eventually, my fingers moved on their own. Title: Has anyone seen their baby monitor move on its own? Body: It turns on when I close my eyes. Sometimes I hear voices, two of them. One warns me, one laughs. One of them tells me to run. The other one laughs when I do. Within an hour, someone replied. Their username was Watcher22. They wrote just 3 words: "Don't fall asleep." Section 4. The forum replies. For a few minutes after I posted, nothing happened. My screen just sat there. White background, black text, blinking cursor like a heartbeat that didn't know when to stop. I thought maybe I'd crossed some invisible line between exhaustion and delusion. That maybe I was the only person insane enough to think a baby monitor was whispering to him. Then, a notification pinged. New reply. I opened it, expecting some troll with a laughing emoji or a get help comment. Instead, there was only a username, Watcher22. Their message was short, clinical, and it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Don't fall asleep. I stared at those words for what felt like hours. Then another reply appeared from a different user, Signal Bleed. You heard the twins, didn't you? Twins, I typed back. 2 voices. How do you know about them? No response. Instead, Watcher22 posted again, this time longer. You need to listen carefully. You're already marked. Once the monitor learns your breathing pattern, it opens the channel. They only need the channel. I wanted to dismiss it, call it an elaborate prank, but the phrasing, "the monitor learns your breathing," hit too close to what I'd already experienced. My pulse thudded in my throat. More replies trickled in. A user named Dead Pixel wrote, "You can't turn it off forever. It remembers. The power doesn't matter." And then finally, Watcher 22 again. "Follow the rules. It won't save you, but it might slow them down." Below that, they listed 3 rules. Never turn your back on the monitor when it's off. Never respond to the voice after 3:33 a.m. If the voice starts crying, do not comfort it. The post had no likes, no comments, just silence. Like everyone reading it was too scared to reply. I should have logged off right there. But I didn't. I copied the rules into my notes app, whispering them to myself like some sacred mantra. That night I followed them. I placed the monitor on the dresser facing the crib, then sat in the rocking chair with Lily in my arms. I made sure not to look away when I turned it off, the first rule. I kept my phone open to the clock just to watch the minutes crawl past 3:33. And when the static began again, faint and rhythmic, I didn't answer. I just watched. At first, everything seemed calm. Lily slept peacefully, warm against my chest. I remember thinking how small her hand felt wrapped around my finger, how quiet the world seemed for once. Then the static rose in volume, like someone slowly turning a dial on the other end. A whisper leaked through. "Daddy." It was her voice. I looked down. Lily was still in my arms, breathing steady. Asleep. The monitor stayed dark, but the voice continued. "Daddy, I'm scared." Every instinct in me screamed to comfort her, to say something, anything, but I remembered the rule. Do not respond after 3:33 a.m. I stared at the clock. 3:32 seconds stretched into forever. "Daddy," the voice said again, more urgent now, trembling. "He's in my room." My blood ran cold. I turned on the monitor. The screen blinked to life in static grayscale, showing the crib empty, completely empty. But she was right there in my arms. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked, shook my head, looked again. Still empty. I reached out to touch her cheek and my hand passed through nothing. For a split second I felt warmth, then cold. I dropped my arms and they fell against the blanket. The weight was gone. The blanket was there, but she wasn't. My pulse pounded so hard it hurt. I stood knocking over the chair, shouting her name. The monitor's image changed again, now showing me standing in the room, searching, panicking. But in the corner of the frame near the crib, something else stood. A figure, small and hazy, with Lily's outline, but wrong. Too thin, too still. Its head tilted like it was watching me. I backed away slowly, clutching the edge of the dresser. Then my phone buzzed. A new notification from the forum. Watcher 22. Do not touch her. Not until she stops looking at the camera. I glanced at the monitor. She was still staring straight into it, straight through it. Her eyes were pitch black on the screen, like they'd absorbed the light. I whispered, "Please, let me have her back." The static flared and the darker tone returned, the deeper voice, the one that used to laugh. "She's not yours right now." Then silence. The monitor flickered once more, and suddenly Lily was back in the crib, sound asleep, breathing softly, her face peaceful as if nothing had happened. I ran to her shaking, checking her pulse, her warmth, her scent. She was real, solid, alive. I held her close, but I couldn't stop trembling. The monitor was still on though, and as I looked back at it, I saw movement again, but not in the crib. In the background, on the far side of the room, a tall, dark figure, barely visible, stood with its head bowed. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, not from the forum. A text message. Unknown number. You broke the first rule. I stared at the dresser. I had turned my back on the monitor when I ran to the crib. The static flared once more, louder this time, and Lily stirred in my arms. I turned the device away, but the screen wouldn't shut off. The glow intensified, blinding white. And then I heard her voice again. Not from my arms, from the monitor. Calm, clear, too articulate for a baby her age. "Daddy," she said, "he's here." The power went out a second later. Section 5. The house that listens back. After that night, nothing in my home felt ordinary again. I walked into the kitchen and the lights flickered, not randomly but in rhythm with the monitor's static. At first I thought it was an electrical problem, a blown fuse somewhere, but the rhythm was too deliberate, too precise. I could hear the soft hum of static from the device, almost like it was breathing in time with the bulbs. I reached for the breaker and the lights stuttered violently, flaring brighter than they should have, then dimmed. It wasn't just the lights. Doors started behaving strangely. The closet door in Lily's room, which I always made sure to latch properly, would crack open the second the monitor finished whispering a sentence. The hallway door would close itself halfway, leaving the knob spinning slowly as if something had pressed against it. The sound of the monitor's static seemed to ripple through the wood, echoing through every hallway and corner of the house. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was me, sleep-deprived and paranoid. Maybe the monitor had some feedback loop I didn't understand. But every time I looked at Lily, asleep and innocent in her crib, the feeling of being watched grew sharper, more oppressive. The house wasn't just haunted, it was reactive. That's when I decided to destroy it. I had saved up some old tools, thinking maybe brute force would be enough to sever whatever tether the device had to reality. I grabbed a hammer from the garage, my hands trembling, and brought it down on the monitor. Plastic splintered. Wires curled out like tiny snakes, but the static didn't stop. It intensified, radiating from the broken device. I dropped the hammer, and the sound of a child laughing, soft, taunting, and unmistakably mine, echoed from the walls. I froze. The whispers had moved. They weren't coming from the monitor anymore, they were inside the house. The walls themselves seemed alive, murmuring in soft, overlapping voices. Lily squirmed in my arms, unsettled, as though she felt it too. Every floorboard, every vent, every wall seam carried the sound of voices, some gentle, some angry, some teasing. It was as if the house itself had learned how to speak, or at least mimic the voices it had recorded over the years. I had no choice but to retreat. I grabbed Lily and locked myself in my bedroom. The monitor sat on the dresser, cracked and sparking slightly, but the whispers now echoed through the vents, through the air, through everything. I pressed myself against the wall, listening, and that's when I noticed it. A faint photo sticking out of a torn envelope wedged in the dresser drawer. The image was old, yellowed with age. A woman with tired eyes held a baby not much older than Lily. Beneath the photo, A note in faded ink read, "Watcher 22. Gone. Don't follow." I recognized the username immediately. My stomach sank. This wasn't just a random person online trying to warn me. It was someone connected to this house, the original owner. And from the looks of it, they had vanished with their child years ago. I couldn't stop thinking about the pattern. Child disappears, house reacts, monitor whispers. The static wasn't just a recording, it was a memory. A grief loop, feeding itself and anyone unlucky enough to inhabit the home. My house was a cage, but not for me, for the lingering presence of someone else's desperation. I scoured the attic the next day, my hands shaking, Lily asleep in her carrier. There, among stacks of dusty boxes and old furniture, I found more evidence. Police reports, newspaper clippings, photographs of the missing woman and her child, all labeled with dates from decades past. Their faces were hollow, eyes empty of hope. But the photographs had something more insidious. A pattern of wires in the background tangled through the house in strange, impossible configurations. Some had labels like monitor conduit scrawled in pencil. It made no sense. How could wiring turn a house into a listening device? And then Lily began drawing. At first, it was scribbles. But the next day, her notebook was open to an intricate sketch. A tall, thin figure composed entirely of intersecting lines, a web of wires forming its shape. Beneath it, she wrote, "The man in the wires." I stared at it, horrified. She had never spoken those words aloud. I had never mentioned the sketchbook to her. And yet here it was. Proof that whatever had attached itself to the monitor and, by extension, to this house was reaching out, imprinting itself onto her imagination. I tried everything. I unplugged the monitor, smashed the remnants further, tried to shield Lily from its whispers with every conceivable method I could think of. But the house didn't stop. It seemed to anticipate my every move, reacting instantly. When I unplugged the monitor, the whispers retreated into the walls, the vents, the floors. The static didn't end, it multiplied. I swear I heard the faint, plaintive cry of a child bouncing around the living room, even though Lily was asleep in my arms. I began documenting everything obsessively, not daring to close my eyes for more than a few minutes. Every sound, every flicker of light, every shadow that didn't belong became a line in my growing record of what this place had become. And the more I learned, the more I realized that the house had its own agenda. It wasn't just haunted, it was reactive, intelligent, hungry. Hungry for attention, for fear, for life. It had listened to Watcher 22, learned their grief, stored it like a memory in the walls, and now it was transferring that same hunger to me. I found another envelope hidden in the floorboards beneath Lily's crib. This one contained a journal, written in a shaky hand. It learns you. It follows you. You cannot leave it. Do not let it touch your child. If it wants to speak, it will find a way. The house is not your own, it belongs to the monitor, and the monitor belongs to what we lost. I read it over and over, feeling the weight of those words. The implication was clear. The house, the monitor, the voices, everything was intertwined. Every attempt at control, every effort to resist was just another thread woven into the entity's web. By the third night, I stopped fighting. I placed the monitor back on the dresser facing the crib. I stopped trying to shield Lily from the static, from the flickering lights, from the doors that now moved with a life of their own. I stopped thinking I could outsmart it, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself sit in the rocking chair, arms wrapped around her. The monitor glowed faintly, breathing with static, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. Lily slept, her small fingers wrapped around mine. I realized then that this house, this monitor, this web of voices, wasn't just a machine, it was a living memory of grief, a prison of attention that would never let go. And as I stared at the monitor, the soft hum syncing with the flickering lights, I whispered to myself in resignation, the baby monitor was never turned off again. Section 6. Signal lost. By the 7th night I had stopped sleeping altogether. Hours bled into days, and every moment spent awake was punctuated by the monitor's soft, rhythmic static. I could feel it thrumming through the walls, vibrating under my feet, crawling into my ears and wrapping around my thoughts. Lily slept in my arms more out of habit than safety. I wasn't sure anyone was truly safe in this house anymore. My mind had frayed. Words lost meaning, and the line between reality and hallucination thinned with every whisper. In a delirium born of exhaustion, I did the only thing I felt I could. I reached for the monitor again. My hands shook violently, gripping it like a lifeline, like a weapon, like a key. I whispered into it, desperate, calling for Watcher 22 one last time. "Please, if you're there, help me." My voice cracked, half prayer, half threat. The static flickered in response, soft at first, then rising in volume. Then unmistakably voices answered. Not one but two, speaking in unison. One voice trembled with panic, raw and human, "Help me!" The other, horrifyingly familiar, perfectly mimicked me, repeating my own pleas back to me. My chest tightened as if it were squeezing me from the inside. I could feel Lily stir, her small body tense against mine, her breathing matching the rhythm of the monitor's pulse. I wanted to look away, wanted to throw the monitor across the room, but my hands refused to release it. My mind fragmented further, and every whisper, every echo seemed to fold into itself, creating layers of terror. I realized then that I was no longer speaking into the device. I was speaking through it, the monitor acting as both conduit and prison hours, or maybe minutes. Time no longer mattered, passed in that static-laden limbo. I could hear the house groaning, walls flexing as if exhaling, doors rattling softly, lights flickering in a slow, mocking rhythm. The voices became a chorus, overlapping, arguing, pleading, laughing. I was caught between two realities, the one I knew, with Lily asleep and safe in my arms, and another, one that existed entirely inside the monitor, one that I could feel closing around me. The voice that mimicked me grew louder, more insistent, repeating not just my words but my thoughts, my regrets, my fears. It said, "You should have listened. You should have left her alone." And then the other voice, the pleading one, cut through. I didn't know what else to do. "Help me! Help me!" I understood in a sick, heart-wrenching clarity that this was the cycle. The monitor was no longer a passive device. It was an entity, a vessel, a bridge. It carried the grief, the obsession, the terror of Watcher 22, the child lost, the parent consumed, all compounded into one endless loop. And now it carried me too. I held Lily tighter, but her small body felt lighter, as if she were slipping into the same limbo I was already inhabiting. My reflection in the window caught my eye, and for a brief second I saw not my own face but a twisted overlay. Two faces, one pale and hollow-eyed, the other mocking, smiling. My hands went to the monitor, gripping it desperately, and I whispered, "Please, make it stop." The monitor hummed, almost contemplative, and then quieted. For a moment, silence. A soft, eerie calm that pressed on my ears and filled my chest. My eyes closed. I exhaled, feeling a fragile, fleeting relief. And then the whisper. My own voice, faint and distorted, calling my name. I don't remember how long I sat like that. Minutes, hours, or perhaps the house's own warped measure of time. When the police arrived days later, responding to a concerned neighbor's tip, they found the monitor still broadcasting. The room was serene, peaceful almost, with Lily asleep in her crib. Everything looked normal, pristine even, as if nothing had happened. But the monitor's static remained low and insistent, whispering. They asked me where I was. I tried to answer. I wanted to say, "I'm here, please help," but no sound came. My body felt impossibly distant, trapped somewhere else entirely. I could see the officers moving around the room, checking the crib, flipping the monitor's switches, none of them aware of the sound that seeped through the speakers. And then, the final horror. The monitor's soft voice, unmistakably mine, whispering from inside the device. "Don't let her find you." The officers didn't notice it. They never did. I could only watch, trapped in some echo of reality, unable to move, unable to speak beyond the monitor's soft breath. Lily stirred, innocent, unknowing, while the static hummed and whispered around her like a protective, terrifying cocoon. I understood then that this wasn't a story with an ending. It was a loop, a cycle of grief and obsession that would continue, ever patient, ever watchful. I had crossed some invisible threshold and the monitor had claimed me. And when the next family moved in, when another child slept quietly in that same room, I would be waiting, trapped in the hum, whispering from inside the device. The first warning and the last. If you ever hear a voice on your monitor that sounds like me, don't answer it. And just like that, the static rose again, soft and deliberate, carrying my voice into the empty room, into the darkness, into the next life that would unknowingly join the cycle. The monitor had no end, no mercy, and I had no way to escape. The voices, once just interference, had become eternity itself.